Imagine being shot in the face. The bullet rips through your skull, yet you don't die. You lose an eye, half your hand. You crash in a plane. You're dragged into a prisoner camp, and still, death refuses to take you. This isn't a movie. This is the unbelievable story of one soldier in World War II who escaped death not once, not twice, but 7 times. And what happened to him will leave you questioning if he was the luckiest man alive, or the unluckiest. So yeah, this is the story of Adrian Carton de Wiart, a British officer who basically told death to go screw itself 7 different times. And look, I know what you're thinking. How does someone just survive everything? Was it pure luck? Divine intervention? Or was this guy just too stubborn to die? Here's the thing. Most soldiers in World War II didn't make it through one serious injury. The medical technology wasn't there. The conditions were brutal, and frankly, when your number was up, it was up. But not for Adrian. This man seemed to collect near-death experiences, like some people collect stamps. Born in 1880, Adrian wasn't your typical soldier. He was Belgian by birth, British by choice, and apparently immortal by accident. And by the time his story was over, he'd lost an eye, a hand, survived multiple gunshot wounds, plane crashes, and even pulled the pins out of his own grenades with his teeth. Yeah, you heard that right, with his teeth. Alright, let's get into it. The first time death knocked on Adrian's door was during the Second Boer War in 1901. He was just 21 years old, barely old enough to drink, and already staring down the barrel of a rifle in South Africa. Now, here's where it gets wild. Adrian gets shot in the stomach, and we're talking about 1901 here. No fancy field hospitals, no advanced surgery. Getting shot in the gut was basically a death sentence. But Adrian, he just didn't die. The doctors patched him up as best they could, and somehow, this crazy bastard pulled through. But that was just the warm-up. Because what happened next would make that stomach wound look like a paper cut. 2 years later, still in South Africa, Adrian's having what you might call a really bad day. He's leading a patrol when, suddenly, crack, a bullet tears straight through his face. We're talking entry through the left side, exit through the right, taking out his left eye in the process. Now, most people would be like, okay universe, I get it. Maybe the military life isn't for me. But Adrian, this maniac crawls back to friendly lines, blood pouring from his face. And when the medics try to treat him, he's already planning his next mission. The doctors fit him with a glass eye. And you know what he does? He goes right back to fighting. Because apparently losing half your vision just means you need to aim a little better. Okay, so you'd think after getting shot in the face, maybe Adrian would take a desk job. Maybe do some paperwork, you know, something safe. Nope. World War I breaks out. And this guy volunteers for the most dangerous assignments he can find. During the Battle of the Somme in 1916, Adrian gets his hand absolutely shredded by shrapnel. We're talking mangled fingers, torn flesh, the works. The doctors try to save it, they really do, but the hand just won't heal properly. It's infected, it's useless, and it's causing him constant pain. So what does Adrian do? He asks the doctors to amputate it. Just cut the damn thing off. But here's the kicker. When they refuse because the procedure is too risky, Adrian takes matters into his own hands. Literally, he bites off his own fingers. No kidding, this man bit off his own fingers. Because the doctors wouldn't amputate his hand fast enough. And somehow, he survived that too. By now, you're probably thinking, okay, this guy's been through enough. But the universe apparently had a different plan. In 1917, Adrian's commanding an underground operation when the tunnel he's in collapses. We're talking tons of earth and debris, crushing everything in sight. His men are digging frantically, trying to find survivors, and they're thinking there's no way anyone made it out alive. But after hours of digging, what do they find? Adrian, unconscious but breathing, buried under enough rubble to kill a horse. He wakes up in the hospital with a concussion, broken ribs, and what the doctors called miraculous survival. But Adrian, he's already asking when he can get back to the front lines. Now here's where the story gets really crazy. It's 1940, and Adrian's 60 years old. 60, most people that age are thinking about retirement, maybe some gardening. But Adrian's commanding British forces in Norway, fighting the Nazis. The evacuation from Norway goes wrong, and Adrian ends up on a plane that crashes into the sea. The plane literally breaks apart on impact, and most of the passengers don't make it. But guess who washes up on shore? Battered and bruised, but very much alive. Yeah, our boy Adrian. At 60 years old, with one eye, one hand, and more scars than a pirate. He survives a plane crash that kills almost everyone else on board. Death is starting to look like it's got a personal vendetta against this guy, and it's losing. So after the plane crash, Adrian gets captured by the Italians. Now, you'd think being a prisoner of war would be the end of the story, right? Finally, Death doesn't have to work so hard. Just let old age or prison conditions do the job. But no, Adrian escapes. Not once, not twice, but 5 times. 5 times. The Italians keep catching him and throwing him back in prison, and he keeps finding new ways to get out. They move him to different camps. They increase security. They assign extra guards. And this one-eyed, one-handed 60-year-old British officer keeps slipping away like some kind of geriatric Houdini. The Italians finally give up and just keep moving him to more secure facilities, hoping someone else will deal with him. But Adrian keeps escaping until the war ends. Now here's the thing that gets me about Adrian's story. It's not just that he survived all this crazy stuff, it's how he survived it. Every time death came knocking, Adrian basically said, "Not today, mate," and found a way to keep going. You know what he wrote in his autobiography? He said losing his eye in his hand actually made life more interesting. More interesting. This guy got shot in the face and thought it was character development. But there's something deeper here. Adrian didn't just survive because he was lucky. He survived because he refused to accept defeat. When his hand wouldn't heal, he removed the problem himself. When he was captured, he escaped. When planes crashed, he swam to shore. So we've covered 6 brushes with death. But what was the 7th? Well, that's where the story gets really interesting. Because the 7th time death came for Adrian wasn't dramatic. It wasn't on a battlefield, or in a plane crash, or in a prison camp. The 7th time was in 1947. Adrian, now 67 years old, is fishing in Yugoslavia. Just a peaceful day by the water, finally enjoying some quiet after decades of war. And he has a heart attack. But even then, even when his own body finally said enough, Adrian didn't go quietly. He managed to get himself to help, survived the heart attack, and lived another 16 years. 16 more years. After dodging death 7 times, do you know how Adrian's story actually ends? Not in battle, not in glory. Not with some heroic last stand against impossible odds. Adrian Carton de Wiart died peacefully in his sleep in 1963. At the age of 83, after everything he'd been through, after all the bullets and bombs and crashes and collapses, he simply went to sleep one night and didn't wake up. The man who'd been shot in the face, lost an eye, bit off his own fingers, survived tunnel collapses, plane crashes, multiple prison escapes, and a heart attack, died the most ordinary death imaginable. Natural causes, in his own bed, surrounded by family. Here's what's really wild about Adrian's story. Throughout all of this, he never complained. He never asked for sympathy. He never acted like he was some kind of superhero. In his mind, he was just doing his job. When people asked him about his incredible survival record, he'd shrugged and say it was just luck. Just luck. This from a man who survived 7 separate encounters with death and lived to be 83. But maybe that was his secret. Maybe the reason Adrian survived when so many others didn't wasn't because he was trying to be a hero. Maybe it was because he never gave up, never gave in, and never accepted that his story was over. Let's think about this for a second. What are the odds? Seriously, what are the mathematical odds of surviving a gunshot to the face? Multiple other gunshot wounds, a tunnel collapse, a plane crash, 5 prison escapes, and a heart attack, all in the span of 60+ years. Military historians have tried to calculate it, and the numbers are basically impossible. We're talking about odds so astronomical that Adrian's survival shouldn't have been mathematically possible. Yet here we are, talking about his story more than 60 years after his death. Some people think it was luck. Others think it was divine intervention. But I think it was something simpler and more powerful than either of those things. I think it was will. So what can we learn from Adrian Carton de Wiart? What does his story tell us about human resilience, about survival, about the will to live? Maybe it's that death isn't just about biology. It's about psychology. It's about whether you accept defeat or keep fighting. Adrian never accepted defeat. Even when his body was broken. Even when the odds were impossible. Even when any reasonable person would have given up. Adrian kept going. He didn't survive 7 brushes with death because he was superhuman. He survived because he was stubbornly, relentlessly, impossibly human. The soldier who escaped death 7 times wasn't trying to be immortal. He was just trying to do his job, serve his country, and live his life on his own terms. But somewhere along the way, he became something more than human. He became a legend. Adrian Carton de Wiart's story reminds us that sometimes the difference between life and death isn't about luck or divine intervention. Sometimes it's about refusing to quit, about finding a way forward when there doesn't seem to be one, about looking death in the face and saying, "Not today." And maybe, just maybe, that's a lesson we all need to remember. If this story of incredible survival inspired you, make sure to hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear about the power of human resilience. Leave a comment below. What do you think was the secret to Adrian's survival? Luck, willpower, or something else entirely? Don't forget to subscribe for more incredible true stories from history that will leave you questioning what is possible. Because sometimes, truth really is stranger than fiction. Thanks for watching, and remember, your story isn't over until you decide it is. Stay curious, stay strong, and I'll see you in the next one.